Hey guys, welcome back to the Ground Up. I'm Jay. Today we're going to be talking about my life as an ENTP in the military and my life prior to the military. So I just want to start off by letting you guys know that something I haven't really spoke on is that I'm actually in the military currently. I haven't really spoke on it because I tried to make sure that I wanted to mainly focus on the aspect of me being an ENTP and an 8-wing 7 at that, like an Enneagram 8. Um, Something about this is that I'm in the Air Force. My job is munition systems. I work with anything from bullets, um, bombs, missiles, those types of things. So being in the military, being an ENTP, has a lot of pitfalls and it has a lot of difficulties. But then there's also things that I learned from it and things that are um, very unique to my experience. Now, I've actually watched other videos about some ENTPs in the military, like one where he's talking about being in the Marines, another guy was talking about being in the Navy. Well, I sort of wanted to cover this in in a different way because I know that they mainly focus on the sort of the military aspect of it, but I want everybody from different aspects of life to be able to view this and understand where I'm coming from. I want to cover the topic of the military and my life before the military. So you guys already know I'm an ENTP. I'm actually not a. I don't know if you guys know anything about Enneagram. I'm an 8, and there's a misconception that maybe the military may affect your Enneagram, and that's what makes somebody turn into an 8 possibly, but that's not the case. I was actually 8 before I was an 8 before the military, and I'm just now an 8 in the military. Um, so yeah. So let's start off with the beginning, why I joined. Um, so I actually had told you in the past that I had come from a sort of like a very tough household, tough love type of environment. There was a lot of tension and turmoil, and there's just a lot of um, well, in my family, in my life, there's a past that has sort of wreaked havoc on on the family, and there is a um, sort of vicious undertone. What I mean by that is there is a past that has to do a lot with sort of a lot of negative aspects of of people in general. I come from a family that has had a lot of negativity, I would say, and they've sort of had to grow from that. We've had to learn to grow from that. I personally I've had sort of a better footing on life compared to my other family, like other people in my family, because they come from a place of like violence and stuff like they come from an environment to where there's like violence, like gang banging and stuff like that. For me, I was actually raised in a nicer environment, but still there was violence because of the past. Um, I was about 8 years old when my mother had actually met someone who's actually my stepdad, and I just call him dad. I mean, he's pretty much raised me at this point. He's raised me my whole life, so um, he sort of he took me in, and he sort of helped raise me. There was a lot of tension still in the household because being the way that I am, being an ENTP, and my mother being sort of like a more of a common personality type, and also coming from the area that she did, with the violence and everything like that, there was a lot of tension, and so this made me out to be sort of like a, at an early age you start to your Enneagram is what your Enneagram takes effect at an early age, and this is what made me become the person that I am today, the sort of almost like domineering type of personality. I already knew that I wanted to, take control of my environment at an early age, and that I wanted to make sure that I had, everything that I need to be the dominant person in any given situation. So growing up in the household, that was not the case. That was never the case. I didn't really have that power, and so I saw the military as an outlet. Now my first choice was actually not the Air Force, but it was the Marines. One, because that's what my stepdad was in. He was in the Marines. And then two, because that's just who I saw first. They were really the ones to come up to. They're the ones who actually tried to get me into the military. They actually used to go to these. I'm sure you guys have seen it, where different branches would come up to your school and they recruit people. Well, that's sort of what they did with me. I saw them, and it was in the cafeteria one day. I was, going to go get some food, and I came out of. I got done eating, and I saw on this platform outside, on this platform where they usually have like speeches and all that type of thing. The Marines were actually set up to where they had a table, a booth, and they also had like a pull-up bar. And so everybody was going up there trying to get these pull-ups in. And I saw them, and I was like, thinking like, oh, I can do that. I can beat those guys. Like those guys, they're not getting enough. So I decided, okay, I can go up there. And everybody was sort of like, skeptical, like, oh, he can't do these pull-ups or whatever. But being an ENTP 8, I was very determined because I like being the underdog. Like people underestimated me, so I was like, all right. So I started doing these things, and I started pulling up, and I was getting, I was going to be the first person to actually get to the amount that they said you have to have, which is, I think it was like maybe 17 or 20 or something like that. Or maybe I think it was that I got 17, you're supposed to get 20. But anyway, I ended up doing the most. I got down, and then that's when they were like, oh yeah, congratulations, yada, yada, yada. And they're like, okay, sign here. So they tried to get me in, and I went home and I went to tell my parents what I wanted to do. And my dad actually was thinking like, oh, that's a good idea, you want to join the Marines. My mom, she was like, well, I think, yeah, the military is a good place to go, but, you'd actually, I think you would much more enjoy the Air Force. And so I was very determined on being like in the Marines. I was like, no, I'm going to be in the Marines and yada, yada. But she actually talked me into it because I was like, oh, okay, I see that, logically looking down the road, there's, some better options that you have in the Air Force. So yeah, that's what got me in. I ended up going in 2015. I've been in for 5 years now. My first base was in Alaska. I was stationed there for 3 years until I had to leave, and that was rough. That was real rough. Not just because of the conditions that you're working under, like negative 30-degree weather, you're having to deal with that. You're also having to deal with just like, it was very cutthroat, and being an intuitive in the military, it can be very undermining. You can have a lot of issues that you don't understand. It's the thing about the military is that it takes your weaknesses and like just throws them right in your face. So you have to learn to deal with it. It was very challenging and it was very tough. I was very alone. It was very intense. People were, they're just really trying to. If you don't seem like you fit in, people are, no matter where you're at, people are going to try to, sort of shun you, put you out, that type of stuff. So it was what it was. I was able to deal with it, and a lot of people actually were struggling more than myself. Not because I feel like they didn't have it harder, because a lot of them they were able to get along with one another easier, but they just couldn't deal with it. I feel like it's sort of being an 8. You just know you can just deal with stuff because you're used to dealing with not being treated so well. So I'd actually say that even though it was rough in the military the first few years, I would say it was rougher at home because it's harder to deal with somebody who's being tough on you, who you value more. Whenever you value somebody more, and in the military, it was sort of like, well, if you don't like how I do stuff, like whatever, So it didn't really affect me as much as it did at home, but it still affected me. So I was able to get through that. I ended up leaving.